The air in the pediatric specialist's office was sterile, cold, a stark contrast to the frantic heat consuming Alara from the inside out. Every tick of the minimalist clock on the wall echoed the frantic beat of her heart, a drum signaling a doom she couldn't yet name. For weeks, her 7-year-old daughter, Lily, had been fading, a vibrant watercolor painting left out in the rain. Local doctors were baffled, their words a confusing tapestry of inconclusive tests and rare markers. They had sent her here to the best, a name spoken in hushed, reverent tones. Dr. Alexander Sterling, a name that meant nothing to her, other than a sliver of desperate hope. Lily, pale and small in the oversized patient chair, clutched her worn, stuffed rabbit, her large, unnervingly familiar gray eyes fixed on her mother. "Is he going to make me better, Mommy?" Alara forced a smile that felt like cracking glass. "He's the very best, sweetie. He'll figure it out." She squeezed Lily's tiny hand, the lie tasting like ash in her mouth. How could she promise something she wasn't sure of? The door clicked open, and Alara stood, her practiced, polite greeting ready on her lips. It died there, strangled by a sudden, violent rush of disbelief. The man in the white coat wasn't just a doctor. He was a ghost. Older, his shoulders broader, his face etched with a maturity and a hint of shadow she'd never known, but it was him. The same dark, unruly hair that always fell over his brow. The same firm set of his jaw. The same piercing, storm-gray eyes that had once held entire galaxies, meant only for her. Alexander Sterling. Alex. Her Alex. The boy she had loved with the desperation of a first, all-consuming fire. The boy she had fled from 8 years ago, tearing her own life in two to keep a secret she knew would destroy him. His eyes swept from the medical chart in his hand, a professional, detached gaze that faltered the second it landed on her. The chart slipped from his fingers, clattering against the polished floor. The sound was like a gunshot in the silent room. His face, a mask of cool authority moments before, shattered. Recognition warred with shock. Then a darker, more dangerous emotion flickered in their depths. A flicker of possession, of a wound that had never healed. "Ilara?" His voice was a rasp, a ghost of the one that had once whispered promises of forever in her ear. He didn't look at her like a patient's mother. He looked at her like a man who had just found a piece of his own soul, ripped away years ago. He knew her. He remembered. "Dr. Sterling," she managed to breathe, her voice trembling. Her hand instinctively tightened on Lily's shoulder, a primal need to shield her, to hide her. But from what? From the man who was her only hope? Or from the man who could lay claim to her heart and her deepest secret with a single, devastating glance? Alex's gaze dropped from her face to the small, pale girl beside her. He froze, his entire body going rigid. He stared at Lily, at her delicate features, her dark hair, and her eyes. Dear God, her eyes. They were a perfect, miniature reflection of his own. The air crackled, thick with unspoken history, with a question so monumental it threatened to suffocate them all. He took a step forward, his professional demeanor completely gone, replaced by a raw, predatory intensity. "You," he began, his voice low and shaking with a powerful, restrained emotion. "You never told me." It wasn't a question. It was an accusation, a verdict delivered across the chasm of 8 lost years. Alara's world tilted. He knew, or he guessed. The possibility was a living thing in the room, a monster she had spent years keeping caged. "I don't know what you're talking about," she whispered, the denial weak, pathetic even to her own ears. "My daughter is sick. They said you could help." He ignored her plea, his eyes locked on Lily. He knelt, not as a doctor, but as something else entirely, something elemental. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice softening, but the intensity never leaving his gaze. "Lily," she whispered, shrinking slightly behind Alara's leg. Alex's eyes closed for a fraction of a second, a flicker of profound pain crossing his face. Lily. The name they had chosen together, laughing under a canopy of stars, for a daughter they had dreamed of one day. He rose to his full height, his gaze pinning Alara to the spot. The hurt in his eyes was swiftly being consumed by a cold, hard resolve. A possessive fire was kindling there, the fire of a man who had been robbed and had just found what was stolen from him. "I will run every test," he said, his voice a low, dangerous vow. "I will find out what is wrong with her. I will save her." He took another step, closing the distance between them until she could feel the heat radiating from his body. He leaned in, his voice a whisper meant only for her, a promise and a threat wrapped in one. "But let me be perfectly clear, Alara. You're not running from me again. I'll never let you go. Not this time." The world outside the sterile examination room ceased to exist. There was only the charged space between them, thick with the ghosts of 8 years of silence, anger, and a love that had been buried but never died. Alara felt cornered, a wild thing caught in a trap it had unwittingly walked into. Alex's words, "I'll never let you go," echoed in her soul, not as the romantic promise of a boy, but as the unyielding claim of a man who had been denied his past and was now seizing control of the future. He moved with a sudden, terrifying efficiency. "Nurse!" he called through the intercom, his voice a blade of pure authority. "Prep the pediatric VIP suite for immediate admission. I want a full blood panel, genetic sequencing, and an MRI for Lily Collins. Stat." He never took his eyes off Alara as he spoke, the use of her last name a deliberate, cold jab. A nurse appeared, her presence a brief, inadequate buffer. Alara watched in a daze as Alex's demeanor shifted. The wounded lover vanished, replaced by the brilliant, focused doctor. He knelt again before Lily, his voice now a soothing balm. "Hey, Lilybug," he said, the old nickname slipping out, a casual intimacy that sent a fresh shockwave through Alara. "We're going to have a little sleepover here at the hospital. I'm going to find out why you're feeling so tired. Is that okay?" Lily, who usually recoiled from strangers, simply nodded, her gray eyes, his gray eyes, fixed on his face with an unnerving trust. It was as if some primal part of her recognized him, a connection that defied logic and time. The next few hours were a blur of sterile corridors, beeping machines, and the quiet, oppressive tension of the private hospital suite. Alex was a constant, commanding presence. He coordinated teams, analyzed initial results on a screen, and moved with a restless energy that filled the room. He hadn't spoken another personal word to Alara, yet his every action was a message. He was in control. Of Lily's care, of their immediate future, of her. She stood by the large window overlooking the city lights, wrapping her arms around herself as if to hold her fractured pieces together. She could feel his eyes on her back. "You should have come to me sooner," he said, his voice quiet, devoid of the earlier fury, which was somehow more unnerving. She turned to face him. He was standing by Lily's bed, one hand resting gently on her sleeping head. The sight was a portrait of a life she'd run from, a life she'd destroyed, a father watching over his child. "I didn't know where you were," she lied, the words flimsy. "I heard you were the best, that's all." A bitter, humorless smile touched his lips. "The best," he repeated softly. "I became the best because I had nothing else. You made sure of that." He pushed away from the bed and walked toward her, his steps slow, deliberate. "I looked for you, you know. For 2 years, I searched for you like a madman. Every city, every lead. It was like you had vanished from the face of the earth." "Alex, please don't." "Why did you run, Alara?" he demanded, his voice dropping to a raw whisper. He stopped just inches from her, and she was forced to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. She could smell the faint scent of antiseptic and something that was just him, a scent that dragged her back through time, to tangled sheets and whispered secrets. Was I not enough? Was our life, the future we planned, so worthless you could just throw it away without a word? Her heart ached with the weight of the truth she couldn't speak. The truth was that she had run precisely because he was enough. He was everything. And his future, a brilliant career in medicine, was too important to be derailed by a scandal that would have destroyed his family and his legacy. Her father, a powerful, ruthless man who despised Alex and his family, had made the terms brutally clear. Disappear, or he would ruin Alex's life before it even began. So she ran, carrying her secret with her. It was complicated, she whispered, her eyes pleading with him. Complicated, he scoffed. Don't insult my intelligence. His eyes narrowed, the doctor's analytical gaze returning, but this time it was focused on her. Her symptoms, the fatigue, the cellular degradation, it points to a very rare mitochondrial disorder, one that I've built my entire career on studying. Alara felt the blood drain from her face. It's genetic, Alara, he continued, his voice lethally soft. Often passed down through the paternal line. My family carries the marker for it. A flawed gene that has haunted the Sterlings for generations. Most carriers are asymptomatic, but sometimes... His voice trailed off as he looked toward the sleeping child. Sometimes it manifests, aggressively. He held her gaze, and she saw the final pieces clicking into place behind his eyes. It was no longer a suspicion. It was a cold, hard, medical certainty. The board with all the scattered clues of the past 8 years had just been illuminated by a single, undeniable fact. The test results will take a few hours to confirm what I already know, he stated, the words like stones. But you're going to tell me the truth, right now. He reached out, his hand not touching her, but hovering so close she could feel the heat, a cage of energy surrounding her. This child is mine, isn't she? The question hung in the air, not a sound, but a physical weight pressing down on Alara, crushing the air from her lungs. The lie she had guarded for 8 years, the secret that had been both her shield and her prison, was dissolving under the harsh, clinical light of Alex's certainty. The truth was a wild animal, clawing its way out. She looked from his unyielding face, etched with a pain so deep it mirrored her own, to the small, fragile form of their daughter sleeping in the hospital bed. Lily, their Lily, a dream they had whispered into existence. Now a terrifyingly real little girl fighting a battle that was written in his very blood. The denial died on her lips. There was no point. The science, his science, had exposed her heart. Her knees felt weak. She finally gave a single, sharp nod, a movement so small it seemed to absorb all the energy she had left. Yes, she breathed, the word a surrender, a confession, and a plea all at once. She's yours. The impact of her admission was seismic. Alex didn't shout, didn't rage. He simply closed his eyes, his broad shoulders slumping slightly, as if a physical blow had landed. He inhaled a ragged breath, the sound of a man trying to process 8 years of stolen fatherhood in a single agonizing moment. When he opened his eyes again, the storm of anger was gone, replaced by an abyss of hurt so profound it made her want to look away. Why? The word was quiet, but it held the force of a hurricane. Why would you keep my own daughter from me? My child, Alara. What could possibly justify that? Her own carefully constructed walls began to crumble. You don't understand, she began, her voice cracking. My father, your father, he interrupted, a bitter laugh escaping him. I knew he hated me. I knew he thought I wasn't good enough for his precious daughter. But to do this, to convince you to steal my child from me. He didn't convince me. He threatened me, she choked out. The memory's still raw, still terrifying. He threatened you. The room seemed to fade away. the beeping machines and sterile white walls melting into the opulent, suffocating study of her father's mansion 8 years ago. She was 19 again, trembling, the positive pregnancy test hidden in her pocket feeling like a lead weight. Alex was in his first year of a prestigious medical program, his future a brilliant, ascending star. Her father, Conrad Collins, stood by the fireplace, his face a mask of cold fury. "You will end this foolishness immediately," Conrad had said, his voice like chipping ice. "You are not throwing your life away on that sterling boy. His family's name is a joke, a relic of old money they no longer possess." "I love him, Daddy," she had pleaded. "We're going to get married." Her father had laughed, a cruel, dismissive sound. "Love, you think that matters? I will not have my bloodline tainted. But I see I've underestimated his ambition." His eyes had narrowed. "He wants our name, our influence. I can destroy him, Ilara. A word in the right ear, a rescinded scholarship, a fabricated accusation that will follow him for the rest of his life. He will be ruined before he even begins. Is that what your love will give him? A shattered future?" She had stared at him, horrified, seeing the absolute conviction in his eyes. He would do it. He would crush Alex without a second thought, simply to get his way. And then, her hand instinctively went to her stomach, a silent, desperate prayer on her lips. "And if there is any consequence," Conrad had continued, his gaze pointed, "you will handle it. You will disappear. If you ever contact him again, if you so much as whisper his name, I will make good on my promise. You will choose, Ilara, your life with him, built on the ashes of his ruin or his future. You cannot have both." The memory receded, leaving her back in the hospital room, tears streaming down her face. "I chose his future," she whispered to Alex, the confession tearing from the deepest part of her. "I chose you. I couldn't let him destroy you. It would have killed me to watch him do it. So I left. It was the only way I knew how to protect you." Alex stared at her, his expression unreadable. The narrative he had constructed over 8 years, of betrayal, of being abandoned, was being systematically dismantled. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not the woman who broke his heart, but the terrified girl who had tried to save him. He stepped forward, his hand coming up, and for a heart-stopping moment, she thought he would touch her face. Instead, his fingers brushed against the sleeve of her sweater, a hesitant ghost of a touch that spoke volumes. "All these years," he said, his voice thick with a dawning, horrified understanding. "I hated you. I convinced myself you were selfish, cruel, and all this time, you were protecting me? I would do it again," she sobbed. "To keep you safe, I would do it all again." The raw honesty of her words seemed to break through the last of his defenses. The anger, the bitterness, the resentment that had been his constant companions for nearly a decade, all of it gave way to the overwhelming reality of their shared tragedy. He reached out, and this time his hand cupped her jaw, his thumb stroking away a tear. The touch was electric, a jolt of memory and sensation that nearly brought her to her knees. It was a touch she had starved for. "He took everything from us," Alex murmured, his gaze holding hers. "He stole my daughter, my life with you, our life." Before she could answer, a small sound came from the bed. "Mommy?" Lily's voice was weak, laced with sleep. "I'm thirsty." The spell was broken. Alex instantly dropped his hand and turned back to the bed, his entire being shifting back to doctor, to father. He poured a small cup of water, helping Lily sit up and drink, his large hands infinitely gentle. As he soothed her back to sleep, stroking her hair, Ilara watched them, her heart a painful knot in her chest. Seeing them together, the undeniable resemblance, the instinctive tenderness in Alex's touch, it was a glimpse of the life that had been stolen from them. A life she had sacrificed to save his. As he stood and turned back to her, the weight of their new reality settled between them. The secrets were out. The past was unearthed. But the path forward was a terrifying unknown, overshadowed by the illness that held their daughter's life in the balance. The digital clock on the wall read 3:17 a.m. when Alex returned to the suite. Ilara was curled in a ridiculously uncomfortable armchair, a thin blanket pulled up to her chin, though sleep was a distant country she couldn't reach. Every beep from the monitors connected to Lily was a jolt to her system. He didn't have to say a word. The grim set of his jaw and the tablet in his hand told her everything. He sank into the chair opposite her, the exhaustion of the last few hours carving new lines around his eyes. "It's confirmed," he said, his voice flat, stripped of all emotion. "It's sterling mitochondrial myopathy, a variant I've only seen in old family records. It seems I'm the unlucky one who carried the active gene." The clinical terms were a shield, but she could see the self-loathing simmering beneath the surface. He had given this to their daughter. His family's curse was now Lily's nightmare. "Alex, it's not your fault," she whispered, the words feeling utterly inadequate. "Isn't it?" He looked up, and the raw guilt in his eyes was a physical blow. "I gave this to her, Ilara. My own daughter. A child I didn't even know existed is fighting for her life because of my defective DNA." He swiped a hand over his face. "All my life, I've been fixing other people's children, curing the incurable, and now my own child—" He couldn't finish the sentence. The silence between them was heavy with what-ifs and recriminations. To break it felt like a sacrilege, but she had to. "What does this mean? For her? Can you fix it?" He finally looked at her, the brilliant doctor momentarily resurfacing. "There's a treatment, an experimental protocol I've been developing. It uses targeted gene therapy to encourage the healthy mitochondria to replicate and overtake the damaged ones. It's aggressive. It will be hard on her." His gaze intensified, becoming possessive, protective. "And I'm the only one in the world who can administer it. I need your consent." The irony was staggering. The man she had run from to save his future was now the only one who could save their daughters. "Do it," she said without a second of hesitation. "Whatever it takes. Just save her, Alex." His nod was sharp, resolute. "I'll protect her, Ilara. I swear it." The vow hung in the air, a promise that extended beyond the hospital walls, a shield against the illness and the shadows of their past. The next days bled into a harrowing routine. Ilara barely left the suite, watching as Alex commanded his team with a precision that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. He was a general waging war on a cellular level. He explained every step to her, every fluctuation in Lily's numbers, treating her not as a hysterical mother, but as a partner in this fight. The shared terror forged a new, fragile intimacy between them. They existed in this bubble, the rest of the world falling away, their universe shrinking to the size of this one room and the small child fighting within it. One night, as Lily slept, her breathing shallow but steady, Ilara found him staring at their daughter's face. "She has your smile," he said softly, a ghost of a real smile touching his own lips. "When she's not, when she's well, it lights up her whole face." "She has your determination," Ilara countered quietly. "She fights for everything. Even when she was tiny, she was the most stubborn baby." They shared a small, sad smile. It was a moment of peace, a glimpse of the parents they should have been. "I'm sorry," he said, turning his gaze to her, "for hating you, for not understanding." "And I'm sorry I didn't trust you enough," she admitted. "I was so scared of my father, of what he would do." The mention of Conrad brought a chill back into the room. "He can't find out about this, Alex. If he knows she's sick, if he knows I found you?" Alex moved to stand beside her, his presence a solid wall of warmth. I've been searching for you for 8 years, Alara, he said, his voice a low, possessive rumble. Do you really think I'd let a man like that get near you or our daughter now? You're mine now, both of you, and I'll protect you, even if it costs me everything. His words wrapped around her, a dangerous comfort. Before she could process the intensity of his claim, a sharp, frantic beeping shattered the quiet. An alarm. One of the monitors was flashing a frantic, angry red. Instantly, Alex was in motion, his face a mask of cold focus. Her O2 is dropping, her heart rate is crashing. He barked orders at the intercom, and in seconds, the room was flooded with nurses. Alara was pushed back against the wall, a helpless observer as the team swarmed around Lily's bed. The rhythmic beeping was replaced by a high-pitched, continuous tone, a sound she knew meant the unthinkable. Charge the paddles, Alex commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. Alara's hand flew to her mouth, a scream trapped in her throat. She could see Lily's small, still form, and Alex, his face pale, his eyes burning with a desperate fire, fighting to bring their daughter back from the brink. The life they had just found together was threatening to slip through their fingers, and all she could do was watch him fight a battle he could not afford to lose. Time shattered into a million sharp-edged pieces. The world became a terrifying tunnel of sound and motion, with Alex at its epicenter. Alara saw his knuckles, white as he gripped the defibrillator paddles. She heard the alien whine as they charged, a sound that would be seared into her memory forever. Clear! Alex's voice was a raw command, a prayer ripped from his soul. Lily's small body jumped on the bed, a heartbreakingly violent motion. Nothing. The high-pitched, steady tone continued its siren song of death. Again, higher charge, he roared, no longer a doctor giving orders, but a father refusing to surrender. He was pouring all of his life force, all of his rage and love and regret, into this one desperate act. Alara could see the sweat beading on his forehead, the frantic, focused terror in his eyes. He was not just fighting a medical event. He was fighting fate, fighting the ghost of his own flawed genetics, fighting for the 8 years that had been stolen from them. Come on, Lilybug, he whispered, his voice cracking as he positioned the paddles again. Don't you do this. Don't you leave me. I just found you. Please. Clear. Another jolt. And then silence. A profound, echoing void. For a second, the world stopped breathing. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic prisoner. Then, a single beautiful sound, a beep, followed by another, slow, labored, but steady. A collective sigh of relief filled the room. The nurses began moving with renewed, less frantic purpose, stabilizing Lily, adjusting her medication. Alara's legs finally gave out, and she slid down the wall to the cold, unforgiving floor, burying her face in her hands as silent, racking sobs shook her entire body. Through the blur of her tears, she saw Alex. He stood over Lily's bed, one hand resting on their daughter's chest, as if he could physically keep her heart beating through his own will. His professional mask was gone, shattered. His shoulders shook, and he leaned his head against the bed rail, a man utterly broken and remade in the crucible of those few minutes. The nurses quietly filed out, leaving the three of them in the aftermath of the storm. Alex slowly straightened up and turned, his eyes finding her on the floor. He crossed the room in 2 strides and knelt in front of her, his own face ashen, his eyes hollowed out with a terror that mirrored her own. Without a word, he pulled her into his arms. The embrace was not gentle or comforting. It was desperate, a drowning man clinging to the only other survivor of a shipwreck. She wrapped her arms around his neck and held on, feeling the tremors that ran through his powerful frame. He was as terrified as she was. "I thought I lost her," he rasped into her hair, his voice thick with unshed tears. "I thought I'd lost you both all over again." "She's a fighter," Alara whispered back, her voice hoarse. "Like her father." He pulled back just enough to look at her, his hands framing her face. The lines of exhaustion and fear were still there, but underneath was a new, unbreakable resolve. "This changes nothing and everything," he said, his voice low and intense. "The treatment is working, but it's a war. This was the enemy's biggest assault. We just have to hold the line." He paused, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. "But when this is over, we are not going back. There is no more running. There is no more hiding. You and Lily, you are my family. I am never letting you out of my sight again." The days that followed were a testament to that vow. The crisis had been a turning point. Lily's body, though weak, began to respond. Her numbers stabilized, then slowly, miraculously, began to climb. Alex never left the hospital. He slept on the cot in the suite, worked from his laptop by her bedside, and shared quiet, exhausted meals with Alara from hospital trays. They spoke in low tones while Lily slept, filling in the vast, empty spaces of the last 8 years. They didn't just rebuild a bridge, they forged a new one from steel and tears, and a shared, ferocious love for their daughter. A week later, Alara was reading to Lily when she felt a faint pressure on her hand. She looked down. Lily's eyes were open, no longer clouded with fever, but clear, weak, but aware. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice scratchy. Alara's breath caught. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." Lily's gaze drifted past her, to the man sleeping in the chair on the other side of her bed. He'd worked for 36 hours straight and had finally crashed. "Is that the doctor?" "Yes, sweetie, that's Dr. Alex." Lily's small brow furrowed in concentration. She looked at Alex, then back at Alara, her unnervingly perceptive gray eyes moving between them. A flicker of understanding, a child's simple, profound logic, crossed her face. She lifted her other hand, the one not holding Alara's, and weakly reached toward Alex. Alara understood. She gently woke him, and Alex was alert in an instant, his eyes going straight to Lily. "Hey there, sleepyhead," he said, his voice soft, full of a love so profound it made the air hum. Lily didn't answer. She simply held her small hand out to him. He took it, his large, strong hand enveloping hers. And then, Lily did something that sealed their future. She guided his hand and Alara's hand together, her own small fingers a fragile link between them, resting on top. She looked at them both, a faint, tired smile touching her lips. "Home," she whispered, before her eyes drifted closed again, falling into a deep, healing sleep. Alex and Alara remained where they were, their hands joined over their daughter. They looked at each other, and in that shared glance was a silent vow. The past was a landscape of secrets and sacrifice. The future was an unknown territory. But here, in this room, holding on to each other through their daughter, they were finally, irrevocably, home.